There are homes that we go into, we tell the people, lock the door, leave the place. It isn't even worth it for an exorcist to go in there.
So what you do is to go to the grave site or go to the haunted location, load your camera at the site, shoot a full roll of film, go off by yourself, shoot in areas where you seem to feel something. Shoot 2 or 3 or 4 times in one location.
We could put the first slide up and look at it. Wow.
Well, there you're seeing your stereotyped ghost. Look at the appendage-like arms and legs.
Well, we've been called ghost hunters, paranormal researchers.
But we prefer to be known simply as Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Hello guys, it's Cynthia and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be discussing the Warrens and the truth behind them. Yes, and if you don't know who the Warrens are, basically they are behind the whole Conjuring franchise, The Nun, yada yada do, these little boppers. So if you don't know, my channel is basically consisting of conspiracy videos, true crime videos, and whatever I think should be on this channel. So that is our little informative, and let's get right to the case. Also, I hope you can see, since it's little spooky vibes, I have my little spooky little guy here from Halloween. Yeah, spooky. And I have my little candle to illuminate the presence. So, as we all know, the Warrens are paranormal investigators. They're very well known. They started the Conjuring franchise, and they were born in 1926 and 1927. They were a year apart. Ed born first, of course, and Lorraine afterwards. And they were born in Bridgeport. They were born in Bridgeport in the same place, just a year apart. How cool for them. So Ed grew up saying that he had a haunted house. That probably builds into his fascination with them later on, as we'll see. But he claims that from the ages of 5 to 12, that he heard knocking sounds, footsteps, and he felt that he saw shadows in his house. He also claimed that everyone in his family knew this, but they didn't agree. They thought, no, there's obviously a logical explanation, which led him to believe that they knew there was something up with the house. They just didn't want to admit it. And we don't really have a lot on Lorraine's childhood. Mainly, it's just that she is a claimed medium, which basically means she can communicate and or see and or hear the paranormal world. Whether that be ghosts, demons, anything, she has a connection to them. But yeah, we don't really have too much on Lorraine until she meets Ed in 1944, and Lorraine claims that with her sixth sense basically she saw Ed, not as he was now at the age of, this is 44, 26 he was born, so teenagers to 20s, I'm not good at math. Basically, she didn't see him as this. She saw him as the future man she'd marry. So she knew that when she saw him, this is my husband. This is the man, ride or die. Just saying, that's a cheat code. I mean, I think if everyone could do that, we would. So pretty short after that, within a few years, 1945, they decided to marry. They married in 1945, they had a child, and later this child she doesn't end up actually living with them. Like in the Conjuring movies, they try to portray them, and you'll see this a lot, they try to portray them as being a very happy family, very committed to each other, but the daughter ends up not living with Ed and Lorraine. She ends up living with the grandparents, so she's not really totally immersed in her parents' life, especially since they were traveling all the time for their cases. Their job was very important to them. Anyways, they had her. Ed decided to go to a college in Hamden, but he still had this really intense fascination for paranormal investigating. So he decided to keep reading this magazine called Fate magazine, and basically they posted little columns where people would submit their haunted houses and a little small short story about it, and if Ed decided that they were interesting enough or fascinated him enough, he was going to go visit and sketch this house. And he did that a lot. That's how he began this journey and got his name and credentials out there. But to be frank, he was actually a self-proclaimed demonologist. Like, he didn't go to school for it. He didn't specify, like, he didn't study it, really. He just went on these things, was fascinated by it, and I think he learned through these houses. So, yeah. I mean, I would go to a professional for that. I mean, we have the haunted, we have paranormal activity people, we have, I don't know, we have all of, you know the shows I'm talking about. But I guess they didn't have reality TV, and they would accept him. They decided that when this woman knocked on the door, yes, it was Lorraine, not Ed. Ed would hand the sketch he made to Lorraine, and he would convince her to knock on the door, and she was his way into that house. She would tell them the fascination they had with this house, and they would give in, because I mean, obviously if you're putting your house into a newspaper talking about how awesome it is, how haunted it is, then people are going to come up to you. So this probably was not that weird as I think it is. But if someone knocked in on my house and was like, oh, I love the haunted feel of your house. Okay. But this worked really well for them. I mean, we know who they are now. This just gave them a name, and a lot of people began going to them and calling them. This is when their lectures began. They began lecturing people about what they do and what they see, especially about Lorraine's ability. And this was not just at high schools, but also colleges. So they got a bigger clientele from all of their lectures. And then in 1952, they used this momentum to basically create the Society for Psychic Research. And this is still run today. It's just now run by their daughter instead of by them, because they are both dead. And then this is when their real investigations began. They had always had calls and been investigating, but this is where, like, the true investigation began, the investigations that we hear about, you know, Amityville, Annabelle, the Devil Made Me Do It case, the Poltergeist in London. All of these cases they began to investigate because now they had the actual name to back up them doing it. And so basically one of the things we will discuss about the cases is that people thought that they were frauds. There are some claims all the hauntings were not real, they were actually fake, and this is sort of confirmed. For instance, let's just glance at Amityville Horror. This was a really big case for them. I mean, it had a whole book, and at the end of the day, it was all debunked. So how could you be so truthful in everything that you do, but you spent so much time and energy and profit on a fake story? So this began a lot of speculation after Amityville happened, but a lot of the debunking for their cases actually came after Ed had died. He died in 2006, and this is when people began coming forward, and not just people who were interested with the Warrens and had something to say all the time. This was people who were actually witnesses or had provided testimonies, were people who were in the cases, and they came forward and said that Ed had paid them to say that they were haunted, say that they were possessed, and so they recanted their testimonies after Ed had died. There is nothing that I have read has told me that Lorraine has said anything about this. To this day, she still claims that everything that she did and Ed did was 100% true. Hey, I just wanted to pop in here real quick and say that I don't know why I make it sound like she's still alive. She is dead. I just wanted to come clear about that. It sounded like no, she's probably living in spirit, but she is dead. She is dead. That is all I wanted to clear up. Thank you. There are a few things that she says that she says there's a few things in the movie that they just added for cinematic effect, but you can tell that there is more false information in the movies than real, obviously. So take what you can take from her. And you'll see it from Lorraine. She either stays quiet or 100% backs up the story they've been telling for years. And it was also revealed that in their big poltergeist case in London, that again was a really big case to get their name out there, that they actually didn't play as big of a part as they'd claimed in it. And that also just shed some light on the fact that they kind of upped the stakes about what they put in, like the work they put in and how much they participated. So it just, again, made people question, were the demons as scary? Were these cases as intense? It just made people question. But even though that is all very interesting, that is not the information that I wanted to share with you today. The information about the actual Warrens is very different than what they portray on screen. The Warrens we see are these very devoted, loving people to each other, to everyone else, to their child. They are just a lovely, wholesome couple, and I think the actors really help in their casting to like make you believe that. But that is not who they were behind the scenes. In the 1960s, Ed had actually participated in a pedophilic relationship, allegedly, with a 15-year-old. At this point, he was 35. They developed this relationship to where the victim, Judy, who has come forward, this is where we have received all of our information, she has come forward and said that she was living in the home with Ed and Lorraine for 40 years. And Lorraine knew about it because she was also living in the house. So it's just very interesting. This was all happening under everybody's noses. Judy also claims that they would say that she was just some poor girl or a niece that lived with them, so nobody had any idea what was actually going on behind the scenes. And since their image was so important to them, obviously they had covered this up, they had an excuse for why she was there, they looked at all the possible scenarios in which people would question and had an answer right away. So what ended up happening was that in 1978, when Judy was in her 30s, so it had been a decent amount of time she's been living in this house, unfortunately she became pregnant with Ed's child. And Lorraine was not happy, neither was Ed, because again, they had built their image at this point. This was the peak of their career, and they did not think that a scandal would look good for them. It was not like modern day where scandals happen and people just blossom continuously, unfortunately. This was in the 70s, so a bad scandal would completely ruin their career, and that was not something that they were ready for. So Judy has stated that Lorraine attempted to persuade her for an abortion because this did not look good. And once Judy was unsure of that, Lorraine's second option was that Judy should claim to have been raped by somebody who went into her apartment, either snuck through a window or whatever, that she was raped. And that's how this baby happened? I don't understand. It also does not make sense because Judy was living with them, as she claims. So I don't understand how they thought that this approach would work because it really doesn't make sense. And how was that a second option? How? I don't understand the logic behind this, but I guess when you're in a really desperate scenario, this kind of response comes from some people. Absolutely horrible, and I feel so bad for Judy who had to be in that situation in the first place. Anyways, unfortunately, she did end up having the abortion, and I say unfortunately just because I feel so bad for her to even be put in a position where she has to struggle between keeping a baby and not keeping a baby, especially when it's with her abuser, and I will be calling him that, allegedly, that he was her abuser, because she was 15 when they had met, and they stayed together for too long in a very toxic relationship, I would say. Anyways, she had, like I said, gone through with the abortion, and what was horrible to hear was that she said that she still was receiving a lecture after they had picked her up from the appointment and in the car on the way home, and they'd given her the lecture again about how this was super bad for their image, yada yada do, and then they had left her alone. Like, they had just talked to her to lecture her and make her feel horrible when it was not her fault that she got pregnant. That's just what happens. sometimes. Anyways, I really felt for Judy in reading this. Obviously, this is all alleged information. It is just her statement. However, I will believe the victim. Not sorry. So, what's also interesting and what I did not expect is that Judy also came forward with information regarding the abuse that she saw towards Lorraine. And it's interesting because you see her show some sympathy in the way that she had witnessed things, and I just think that Judy, she's older now. I think she's in her 70s, but I just think is a very brave woman to be able to talk about what happened, but also just be so kind to one of the people that was a part of such a traumatic experience in her life. But yeah, she came forward with some information that Ed was abusive, and she had stated that she had seen him not only backhand her to silence her, but that he had seen her backhanded so hard that she had fallen unconscious. So obviously this was something that she had seen a lot, and she had said that she even feared that they would kill each other. It doesn't make me question if there was any more abuse that happened, but that is all I have been able to read up on. So yeah, I guess Lorraine was also abused in that household, which just, again, is so crazy to think that we are seeing this portrayal of a Catholic, loving, romantic family, but behind the scenes, it is the complete opposite. And what's actually crazy, is it crazy? No, because this is Hollywood. The production company knew about this. They knew about this, and one of the reasons they did not put this into the movies or even hint at it and gave them a completely different look in the movies was because Lorraine had these demands. And I will read a few of them out, but she had these demands in order for them to make the movies that they could not include any bad things about the Warrens. And let me just read these to you to show you how complicit and condemning these statements are that she said that they could not put into the movie. She said they could not portray her and her husband committing crimes, indulging in sex with minors, child pornography, prostitution, sexual assaults, or extramarital sexual relationships. If that doesn't tell you what you need to know, I don't know what to tell you. As for the claims, unfortunately for Ed, we never got to hear his excuse or reasoning or denial of the accusations because he was silent. Dead. However, Lorraine was alive, but still silent. And her reasoning was very interesting, actually. They said she had health-related issues, so she was silent about the accusations. That doesn't really make any sense to me, but I guess that's just where they stand. Her daughter and the daughter's husband, which was Ed and Lorraine's son-in-law, claims that nothing ever happened. They've never witnessed anything in the 40 or so years that she claims that she lived with them, yada yada do. However, I will again rebuttal that she did not live with them like in the movie. She, in real life, lived with her grandparents. She was not there all the time consistently. She does run their psychic research department or program, but she did not live at that house, so I just question how reliable it is if she wasn't there all the time. No way. I know I have no right. I'm sorry. That's just the opinion I'm giving. All I can say about that. The Warrens have a probably more dark-rooted past than we even will know, because I feel like they did a very, unfortunately, good job at covering it up. And they just knew how to manipulate. And I say manipulate because it's true. I mean, look at Judy. She kept it quiet for 40 or so years, maybe even more. And then you have to look at the franchise as a whole. She did, in a way, manipulate her own story and her portrayal to where you wouldn't think that she was the person she was, just purely based off seeing those movies. And it may not even make you want to question her or anyone. And it was really hard to find anything seriously about their past that didn't relate to how amazing and kind of idolized they are in history, which I find interesting, to where you can barely find any of these legal standings against them. I will also say there are a few accounts of I feel like how money hungry they were. Obviously, I feel like they kept it on the down low. They said that they never took money from people, yada yada do. However, they were given a lot of luxuries. They had travel expenses, food, all of these other things paid for. So they did have a profit, as well as the books they wrote, the movies. For instance, in The Devil Made Me Do It, Archie, I think his name is. If I'm wrong, I'll put it up here. But they had promised that the real life version of him, if this story was made into a movie, that he would be released. And if they publicized this book, or if they wrote about it, or they were allowed to manipulate it in media, basically, that it would bring so much awareness that he would get to go free and everything, and they would kind of get profits from this. However, that is not true whatsoever. He did not get let out, and obviously in the real life version, things turned out differently. But I just feel bad because him and his family, he had stated, had been promised certain promises by them just to get the approval for the license of their story, and I find that very unfortunate that they didn't meet the promises that they said they would give them. That is all I have about the Warrens. Unfortunately, maybe more will come out in time. There's not a lot of information to dig through that is not focused primarily on the Conjuring franchise. I've realized they've done very well. However, I found that this was very interesting news to share because, again, their portrayal is not the real life version, and sometimes I feel like we need to be reminded of that. But thank you very much for watching. I will continue to post hopefully throughout this month. And I will link my Instagram right here. Hopefully you can give me a follow where I will post more behind the scenes or maybe polls about what you guys would like to hear. So yeah, thank you so much again. It's been fun. I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks.